Sandy, thank you, Dr. Dunbar. Thank you, Dean McCauley. Thank you, President Fenves, and thank you, Dr. Lewin. I am truly honored and humbled by your comments and by nursing giving me this award. I am thrilled and could not be more pleased to speak to my colleagues here in the School of Nursing. So I'm very grateful. I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. Okay. So I had the wonderful experience of meeting with oncology scientists this morning, pre-docs, postdocs, and junior faculty. It was good to see so many that I know and to meet new friends and colleagues here in the School of Nursing. This talk is for you. It is for the pre-docs, the postdocs, and for nursing students, for junior faculty. I'm going to talk about career paths and career development in academia, but I can assure you that some of the things that I will say will portend to your career path, whether you're an advanced practice nurse, a nurse manager, whether you work with pharma, or whether you're in academia, because some of the principles of success and getting ahead are similar across industries, but they are mostly particular to academia, which I'll be speaking to today. The title of this talk is Through the Dark, Through the Door, Through Where No One's Been Before. And you may recognize those words from A Million Dreams by Pasek and Paul, written for the musical Greatest Showman. My favorite rendition is by Pink. And I use this as the title of this talk because I want those students and junior faculty to understand that success is not a linear path. It's like chutes and ladders. And there will be lots of doors that you walk through that are scary. Some will be dead ends. Some will be dark passages, and you'll have to turn around. It's not a linear path, and anyone who thinks that success is a linear path is trying to sell you something. So you need to be prepared for the chutes and ladders. Sometimes you'll have steps ahead, sometimes you'll take many steps back. And with luck, there will be people to support you and give you a hand and pull you up again, and you'll get further ahead than you were before. So let's begin. I think career success is helped by three critical things, and that's inspiration, innovation, and impact. And inspiration is about those who inspire you in your career, but it's those who inspire you in your life. Some of these people you will know, family and friends. Some of them will be other researchers. You've read their work and never met them personally. And others will be those we serve. And for us in the health sciences, it is the patient. What we do is to make human beings, one at a time or in large populations, have better health, feel better on any given day. And with that as our true north, I'll walk you through some of my career. I love people, and choosing nursing was the easy thing. Choosing which area of nursing to focus on came later. But it only took the first time I was involved with a cancer patient who was dying, where I found my real passion. It was a woman with lung cancer sitting at the end of her bed. And she said, "You hear this? I know what this is. This is the death rattle. This is my breathing." And she said, "And no one wants to sit with me. Not the nurses, not the doctors, no one." So what I did is I sat with her. And it started a lifelong passion to have the honor of trying to help people with cancer. With that, I have a winding career path of clinical practice, of advanced practice, of nurse manager positions, of running a prostate risk assessment program, all before I got to research. But in the time we have today, I'm going to focus on my research path. So what gives me inspiration? Uh-oh, there we go. And the first thing are those who are so kind and generous. The UP Davis Award is given by a family with a tradition of outreach and giving. And this inspires me every day. Can you imagine teaching your entire family to make this ingrained and part of their psyche so they all do it and they all do it well? I want to give my absolute gratitude to the Davis family, to those watching, particularly Barbara and William Carroll. Barbara also is a nurse and was a graduate of Emory's nursing school in 1969. Their entire family's history of giving and service to civil servants and teachers and nuns and Girl Scouts and church work are just stellar and are inspiring every day. And they're people that I hope my children will be someday as I try to role model these incredible qualities. So who inspires me? Not the people that inspire me, not only those who inspire me to do work, but there are the ones who support me. And I need this behind me for mental health every day. So there's my immediate family. Even on the right in the middle, my two ridiculous brothers who are poking and teasing me as this picture is taken. With all the family craziness involved, they are the ones who make me get up in the morning, and they're not just the people who inspire you to do better, but they're the people that are there for you when you fall down. And that is incredibly inspiring and helpful in any successful career. Some of you may not have partners yet in your life, but there's extended family, and there's certainly an extended network of friends that you can nourish. And it's critical for, again, for your mental health and support, and also for your inspiration. There are those in our professional life who have special meaning to us. And when you find a special mentor and a special sponsor, like I did with Dr. Gerald Hanks. Dr. Gerald Hanks is the chairman of radiation oncology at Fox Chase Cancer Center. He was one of the first radiation oncologists in the country. Prior to this, physicians who gave radiation oncology were radiologists. They weren't in the specialty of radiation oncology. So he was a forerunner himself of this, and also was one of the first to start a comprehensive quality assurance plan for any medical specialty that led the way for many others. He was a mentor who gave not just advice, but opportunity. He opened doors and provided all the resources I needed to take advantage of those opportunities. If I could be 1/3 of the mentor and sponsor that he was, I would consider myself very lucky and hope that I can give back in many similar ways. I had stellar nursing mentors, among them Dr. Ruth McCorkle. Many of you in cancer will know this name. In the 1970s, she was one of the first nurse scientists who ever did clinical trials in nursing. And she also was a forerunner in patient-reported outcomes, although they were not called that at the time. And her work was an absolute inspiration before I ever knew her. And along the way, I met other inspiring nurse mentors, those who are on my dissertation committee, like Roz Watts, who did work in sexual function, which I do a lot of research in that area. And the dean at Penn when I was there, Dr. Afaf Malise, who was a mentor and a champion who opened doors as well. There are lots of other people that inspire and that help you along the way. You'll recognize our own Dee McCauley in this picture, and Dr. Mike Johns. They were the colleagues who put me up for the National Academy of Medicine. And without gravitas of colleagues that are so senior and inspiring like this, I would not have had the path forward that I do. It takes a village for career success, and I'm grateful to every one of them. In addition, there's Emory leadership. I was talking today with some of the faculty and students, and what I was saying is that for real career success, you need to be in a place where you believe in the mission and your leaders. If you don't feel that you are in sync or in lockstep with the mission of your university, if you don't feel that your leadership is supporting you, then you probably are in the wrong place. I have been extremely fortunate in coming to Emory, and I would not have come here without Dean McCauley, who was the Associate Dean for Research at Penn before she came here, and helped lure me down, and it has been a tremendous journey. But I'm also here to recognize the tremendous leadership, our new president, President Fenves, a new provost, Provost Belankama, and Dr. Lewin, Dr. Vakasukumate, and our Chief Business EVP, Chris Augustini. Without their partnership and their leadership, and that being something that I feel supported in and collaborative with, that I would know I was in the wrong place. But it's this group of leaders that inspires me every day to try to do better. So find a place that you love is part of the story that I'm trying to relay. I think we just went past previous. Forgive me. And then those who give me more, I get from more than I give, are my mentees. You're going to hear from 4 of them today, and I'm so honored to call them mentee, but now colleagues. It is just one of the greatest gifts and inspiring to watch young faculty find their path and find their success. And it's intensely gratifying to know that they've built on some small piece of your own work, and that they will reach heights that you never will. And that's what you expect, as you would with anyone you mentor. You want to see them flourish and reach beyond you. They challenge me every day. Their work is amazing, and they're having tremendous impact on the lives of cancer patients. One of the other things that inspire me is working with my team. We have lots of students that we've worked with, and we've got staff who are so dedicated. I would not be able to do what I do without a team. We talked about this earlier today too, with the students and the junior faculty. You will not have true career success without a multidisciplinary, collaborative team. The world has changed. Success isn't something you can do on your own, especially in medicine. Diversity in every way, diversity of thought, discipline, race, culture, language, all of that helps to raise your research to a new level, and it's critical to moving forward. We've been fortunate to have students from all over the university, from the college. Marissa Berg was from public health, who is now getting a PhD. On the bottom left is Colin McNamara, an advanced practice nurse, now applying to medical school. On the right is Dr. Gia Daniel from nursing, who's doing a postdoc in public health. And on the bottom right is Dr. Despina Tesmente, who is a microbiologist, without whom I could not be doing my current work in microbiology. So diversity brings your success, and hopefully, most importantly, engenders your mentees' success. We also have lots of clinical collaborators. They're tremendously inspiring. They help us, give us good, sound clinical ideas and advice. Plus, they have such heavy clinical loads, and yet really dedicate their time because they believe in research. They're at a tier 1 university, and they contribute to all that we do. And their inspiration is key to good work that we do. And last on my list of inspiration, but certainly not least and actually foremost, is our true north. And that are the patients or the populations that we do our work for. They're our reason for being. And I want to thank them. And from them, I garnered most of my inspiration for anything I do in cancer. Knowing that we could help one single person is the most gratifying job that you can ever have. So now you've heard about my inspiration. I started in nursing, in clinical care. I worked my way through to research, And now, how do you have success in research? Well, I've been fortunate, or as I've told the students, maybe I was just too stupid to know what I couldn't do in being able to be the first in a couple of areas that have allowed me to live such an interesting career path and journey. But again, it certainly wasn't linear. Make no mistake that I went through a lot of dead ends and dark passages. I made a lot of errors, but hopefully what I've done is learn from them, was persistent, and moved forward with my science. So some of the areas that I focus on are patient-reported outcomes. I knew early on that the patient voice in cancer was absolutely critical. And it's hard to believe, but back in 1989, the National Cancer Clinical Trials Group, sponsored by the NCI, only focused on treatment outcomes that were survival or toxicity. They did not include the patient's voice. They didn't look at quality of life or cancer control or economic endpoints or implementation science. So all this was new. When the call came out, Dr. Hanks, my mentor, said, Deb, I don't really know about this science, but I know it's going to be important. And I believe that you can do it. Interestingly, at the time, I had been working with him on protocols for the national cooperative groups, but I did not have a PhD. I had a master's degree. And with that master's degree, I was able to write the first quality of life study for RTOG. As I said to those I was speaking to earlier, that may sound quite lovely. And part of it was because Dr. Hanks was my champion and opened doors, and his credibility gave me the in to be able to do this. And yet, when the study went to the NCI, a nurse who has connections to Emory named Mary McCabe, who was working there at the time, called and said, Deb, the NCI really wants the cooperative groups to do quality of life. So we're going to let this study go and we're going to approve it. But it really wasn't that good, and you're going to have to do better. So in some ways, I was in the right place at the right time. But what it made me understand is that I needed all the training possible to be a credible researcher. And thus I went on to get a PhD. This work led to all kinds of opportunities. Since it was the first study, we had to look at new models for incorporating quality of life and other endpoints like economic endpoints, cost effectiveness into national clinical trials. And I developed a model that was used by the RTOG for over a decade that incorporated all of these into clinical trials research. And today this is a given, but back then this was a big paradigm shift, given that we were only looking at survival and toxicity. This led to other opportunities. The NCI started an internal symptom management and health-related quality of life steering committee that then began to be the review body for all clinical trials that included these endpoints. And I was lucky enough to serve with Dr. Michael Fish as the inaugural co-chairs of this committee. This also led to the need for consort charts for how we report quality of life. And I was a panel member in London when that was developed and then published. The NCI committee then conducted a series of clinical trials planning meetings, and from this came multiple publications. It also gave rise to new credibility for patient-reported outcomes in clinical trials. Anyone in cancer may be familiar with the CTCAE, which is a physician-reported toxicity scale, which is extremely important and does good things. However, it was not designed and never meant to be the patient voice. And so we convinced the NCI to develop the patient-reported outcomes version of this toxicity scale. And I was a co-investigator on this very important work, which is now working its way through the cooperatives and is changing how we measure patient-reported outcomes in the national cancer clinical trials. In addition, there have been lots of other initiatives like PROMISE. Many of you in nursing science are using PROMISE measures. They're not cancer specific, but they look at a lot of the symptoms and behaviors that nurses care about and try to intervene on. From the NCI, we've published numerous publications in the Journal of Nursing Cancer of the National Cancer Institute, looking at the core set of patient-reported outcomes that should be measured across cancers and then in specific disease sites. And all of that's very nice, but where does it go? You know, it's not enough just to publish, because that isn't the measure of impact. Even though there are things called impact factors, it's really how is it used. Here is just one example, and I'll give you more as we go. But just this past March, I received a note from a senior director at Varian, which is the company that makes radiation therapy machines and also software. And what they were saying is, based on some of my work, they were using it as some of the rationale to incorporate patient-reported outcomes into their software platform. What she said is, your article reminded me of the importance of the nursing advocacy voice. So using our work for good is what nurses are all about, and that's how we measure our impact. I mentioned how I started with this quality of life study, and that started me on a path in patient-reported outcomes, but it also started me in a path in the National Clinical Trials Network, which was historically physician-run. But this was a new science, and not all physician scientists had a background in these kinds of measures: patient-reported outcomes, quality of life, cost effectiveness. So I was fortunate to be able to volunteer and step up for multiple committees, which then led to more opportunities and eventually to my being PI of their cancer control program in the national cooperative groups. This was the first time, and still today is the first nurse leadership in the National Clinical Trials Network. And I remain one of very few women that have had this leadership role. And I've been honored by this activity and this journey. As you can see in this picture, I have been alone going through some of these doors for sometimes over a decade. In energy oncology, I served for about a decade as the only woman and certainly the only nurse on the executive board. Fortunately, for the first time ever in 150 combined years of the three groups that merged to form energy oncology, we now have, in addition, a female co-chair of this committee, and I welcome her wholeheartedly, Dr. Quinn Lee. As diversity, as you can see, is needed not just in universities, but certainly in the National Clinical Trials Network. Does this make for difficult times, scary doorways to walk through, dark passages to walk down? It does. Does that mean I should fear them and not do them? Absolutely not. And what I encourage you is to find your inspiration, find your support, and find your self-confidence. Because once you know your research and your methods, you are an expert, and you should never, ever back down and bring it to the table through the nursing lens. Because no matter what role I'm in, whether it's senior vice president of research or anything else I may do in my career, I bring my nursing lens to all activities. This work led to numerous other opportunities. I was able to run some of my R01 research through the national cooperatives, and I highly recommend anyone who is interested. It's not for the faint of heart, but it does give a national platform and larger, more diverse samples, and also more credibility to the work that you do when you work with national entities. I have been the PI of 4 and co-I of 15 national clinical cancer trials, and have been able to open doors for others, nurses in the National Cancer Clinical Trials Network, but also other mentees. I work with physicians, I work with epidemiologists, I work with microbiologists, and there's a diverse amount of disciplines that contribute and need to contribute to the work that we do. Our success depends on our teamwork. So I started with prostate trials. I ended up doing other pelvic trials, including in areas of sexual function, some of the work that continues today in our microbiome work. And every door tends to open another door. So this led to work with looking at toxicity and late effects workshops. There's been other work in looking at that measure I mentioned before of clinician reported toxicity. And I've actually been on all 4 versions of this instrument in looking at validity or the items that should be included. You have to be very careful though. We talked today about the junior faculty. And one of the things that I say in a little bit of a different manner, they're all smiling because they know what I mean, but whatever you may suffocate under, and it may be good things or it may be diamonds, you can lay one diamond on yourself at a time, loving each and every activity. But if you're suffocating from a pile of diamonds, you still have to be very judicious with your choices that they're actually helping your career and moving your science and your impact forward. The work I'm doing currently is in the area of cancer and the microbiome. And I'm not a microbiologist. I could not do this without my extremely important partners. So Dr. Konstantinos is a microbiologist at Georgia Tech and is my close working partner in all the work we're doing now in the microbiome. Dr. Desbina Tesmente, you'll be hearing from later today, is now working as a postdoc on our team. She was a pre-doc with Dr. Konstantinos, now works here at Emory and helps continue this work. So I would not be able to delve into new areas without the kind of teamwork and collaborations that we've been able to find. And I encourage you all, take incremental steps. It takes a while to find good relationships and to build teams, but teams are critical to career success. You're seeing some of the work we're doing here and that we're publishing. On the left, what you see in red is cancer and in green is healthy. And what we're showing that indeed the vaginal microbiome is significantly different in those with cancer compared to those that are healthy. And what we're starting to see is a lot of these taxa, these bacteria, are associated with pathogens that cause things like bacterial vaginosis. And we are one of the first. We're going through a new doorway. It may hopefully not be a dark passage, that we're going to see light at the end of the tunnel where we're illuminating new findings. And we will look at symptoms related to these bacteria and what interventions we may be able to provide. This is further work. So that's nice. That was a laundry list of work that I'm involved in. But what does it mean? And none of it goes for anything if all we do is publish and it is not translated or implemented in order to help patients. So how do we follow impact? Well, there are many ways. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So back in as long ago as 1997, we started a trial on looking at different fractionation schedules for radiation therapy for the treatment of painful bone metastasis. Now, around the world, there had been multiple trials showing that just one single fraction was equivalent to alleviating pain as using as many as 10 fractions. But some of the critique was that in alleviating pain, these other studies only used the physician to report pain and did not use a patient-reported outcome. So Dr. Hodgson, a radiation oncologist, designed the radiation fraction schema, and I, as a behavioral scientist, designed the primary outcome, which was patient-reported pain, using the brief pain inventory. We also looked at a number of other quality of life instruments like FACT-G. Many of you in nursing have heard of this, and also a global measure that can be used for cost effectiveness called the EQ5D. And what did we find? We found, similar to the other trials, that There was a complete response between the two arms that was not significant. So whether you used one fraction or you used 10 fractions, you got the same pain control, whether it was complete response or partial response. And then as far as quality of life, we saw that there was no difference between using a single fraction versus multiple fractions to reach radiation, to treat pain related to cancer. We looked at multiple other endpoints and found that most of them were not significant either. There was one where there was a significant retreatment rate on the single fraction arm. Now, sadly, that's been used as an excuse to continue multiple fractions, but in fact, it's not the need for retreatment that was different. Whether you got 1 or 10 fractions, patient had breakthrough pain. The only difference is that if you only had one treatment, you were likely to be treated then for the breakthrough pain with more radiation versus with more pain medication. So what did we say? We said that radiation in a single fraction was equivalent to multiple fractions in terms of pain. And this should be, again, because this was a study building on many other studies, the new standard of care. And of course, the economic analysis showed that a single fraction was cheaper and for healthcare and was more convenient for patients. And this led to a whole number of publications. Okay, but we're still talking about publications. What real impact did this have? Well, this study has been cited only about 500 times, but the altmetrics tell us something extremely important. This study has been cited in most clinical practice guidelines around the world. It is included in most guidelines that talk about palliative radiation therapy for bone metastasis. Well, that's one measure of impact. So all of that's good. We did a trial successfully. We published multiple publications. That's lovely. And now our work is being included in clinical practice guidelines. Does that make one single patient feel better? Does that cause them less money? Does it cause them more convenience by using a single fraction? We have to follow this through to true impact. And what do we see? This study was published in 2005. It was put in multiple clinical practice guidelines, but most concerning is that the rate of using single fraction is only between 3 and 75%, not 100%. And the use of single fraction radiation for painful bone mets is much lower in the United States. Now, I wish you were all sitting in front of me so I could ask you to raise your hand. Does anybody know how we charge for radiation therapy in the United States? Good. I see Ned's head's nodding, at least in my mind. And if you are saying we charge by the fraction, you would be right. So the United States has a built-in disincentive to actually follow clinical practice guidelines. And what do we do about that? Well, we have to fight with Medicare and insurance agencies that they actually reimburse the right way, but there are other things going on. So for instance, in 2017, 13 and 17, many medical societies began a Choosing Wisely campaign for doing the right thing, following the evidence. So we know that there's lots of things done in healthcare that we shouldn't do, that there really isn't good evidence for, that is costly, and it doesn't really benefit the patient. And using a single fraction for patients with painful bone metastasis is one of those chosen for Choosing Wisely. The work now continues in implementation science. It's not enough to put it in clinical practice guidelines. We have to implement it in the clinic, and many studies are underway. Here's another example. Similarly, we looked at a trial in prostate cancer that was standard fractionation versus less number of fractions for low risk prostate cancer. And we've gotten also multiple other studies around the globe that have shown similar outcomes with hypofractionation or less numbers of fractions. However, they didn't include good patient-reported outcomes of their quality of life, of their symptoms. And we included that in this trial. So this was a trial that looked at 41 fractions over 8 weeks versus just 28 fractions over a little over 5.5 weeks. And this was for low-risk prostate cancer. And what did we find? In the parent study that looked at disease-free survival, we found that less fractions were non-inferior. There was no real difference in disease-free survival between less fractions or more fractions. So you can imagine less fractions are easier for the patient and it's less expense to the healthcare system. However, what did we say? We charge by the fraction. There's a disincentive to follow the research. And if there's anything to gleam onto to say that there's a reason not to follow less fractions, here's one that came out. But it was clinician-reported side effects. There was no difference in acute physician-reported side effects. There was no difference in significant grade 3 or greater physician-reported side effects. There wasn't even any difference. It was a 0.06 p-value for genitourinary symptoms, clinician reported. However, on grade 2, which is low grade, minor, there was a statistically significant difference in favor of the longer fraction. Okay, well, if we want to use this now as an example of why we should continue to give people 41 fractions instead of 28, is this really enough? Is this a significant difference that a patient can understand? And so we look at the quality of life, and this was my role on the study, to again incorporate quality of life into this national clinical trial. In this, we looked not only at p-values and statistical significance, we looked at effect size. Why is that important to look at clinically significant effect size? You can imagine on a patient-reported outcome, say it's on a scale of 0 to 100. Say on one arm, patients report a low-grade change, maybe from 0 to 3. On the other arm, they report a change from 0 to 5. The difference between 3 and 5 is 2 on a scale of 100. Is that itty-bitty little change something that a patient can actually experience? They can tell you they felt better or worse with that little tiny change. So it's really important to look at clinically significant change, not just p-values and significant change, especially when you have large sample sizes, because you can find significant changes that really are not clinically significant, where a patient can't tell any difference at all. And in fact, that's what we found here. In none of the quality of life domains, whether it was sexual function, urinary function, anxiety, global quality of life, there was no difference. In terms of the bowel domain, remember the physicians said that there was a low-grade difference in bowel changes. The patients saw no difference at baseline. They saw no difference at 6 months. At 12 months, they again saw an itty-bitty difference in change in scores. And this change was statistically significant. But guess what? It was not clinically significant. The patients could tell no difference. So it is with the help of patient-reported outcomes that we become the tipping point for practice change. And indeed, we now say that hypofractionation should support the value of practice change for low-risk prostate cancer. Again, let's follow the impact. So we published the primary outcome of disease-free survival, that there was no difference back in 2016. This has had under 300 citations, but look at that altmetric score. People don't always understand how to use this. What does it tell us? It tells us that this work, published only a few years ago, is rapidly making its way into national and international clinical trials guidelines. So is the quality of life, making its pathway through the same very quickly, having a high altmetric score, even higher than the citation, because patient-reported outcomes, the work that nurses do so uniquely well, are helping to change clinical practice. That will never be enough. We still have to follow it through. Are people using the clinical practice guidelines, and how do patients feel? Are they happy with the coming in less? Is it less of a burden on the healthcare system, less money that we're using? And there's lots of opportunity to follow your work all the way through impact. Implementation science is one of those ways. There's many other ways to make impact too. And one of them is through service in our professional organizations. A lot of students and junior faculty are trying to find their passion and where they should work and where they can best use their time. Know from the start that your time is your most valuable commodity. You must be very thoughtful and purposeful, excuse me, about where you spend your time. You may want to try multiple organizations, that's understandable, but to really make an impact, you need to show up. You need to raise your hand and volunteer. You need to do your time as a member before you can have greater impact in doing things like chairing committees. So you can't do that for 5 committees or for 5 professional organizations. So find, again, follow your passion. Excuse me. I think this comes from talking all day. Forgive me, I'm going to try a lozenge. And I had the opportunity to work with the Oncology Nursing Society through multiple iterations and through multiple committees, including writing manuals for radiation oncology nursing, including doing research, and including mentorship. Excuse me. Not a good time for a coughing attack. Through work in societies and through broader community service, you can extend your impact. You can work to incorporate your research by advocating for research along the areas you do. You bring your expertise, and these organizations highly value experts in a number of areas. I started early on working with the American Cancer Society. I was on their professional boards, and I worked, thank you. They're trying to feed me water here to keep me going. Chaired Relay for Life teams, volunteered in all ways. It's also a great way to network, to meet other leaders in the field and work together and collaborate. I did a lot of volunteer work with the National Cancer Institute and was fortunate to be appointed by the director of the NCI to the Clinical Trials Advisory Committee. The work I was doing in symptom management and quality of life was novel. And so I was able to work with multiple committees within the NCI. Also was able to advocate for nursing and for the science that we care about, symptom management, quality of life, patient-reported outcomes in many of their policies. To follow that, I was appointed by President Obama to the National Cancer Advisory Board, on which I still serve. I also co-chaired their ad hoc working group that restructured their global health office. These opportunities are fantastic, but through every one of them, I bring the lens of being a nurse, I bring a patient-centered focus, and I bring the need for the research in patient-reported outcomes and symptom management so that the patient's voice is heard through all of this. So find your passion, weave it through your work. In 2013 and 14, I did volunteer work for the National Academy of Medicine by serving as a reviewer on their consensus reports, and was with the nomination of Dr. Dee McCulley and Dr. Mike Johns nominated in 2016. This has led to other opportunities, again, volunteer opportunities, no pay, lots of time, but greatly rewarding where you can weave your science into impact. So I've co-authored 2 recent National Academy reports, one on diagnosing and treating adult cancers and the other on radioactive sources, looking at applications and alternative therapies. One of my great joys has been to serve as the past chair for the School of Nursing Advisory Board with our partnership with Ethiopia. This opened multiple doors for my own research and for finding great collaborators in Ethiopia. We're now also doing work to help bring modern radiation therapy for the first time to the country of Ethiopia. One door opens another. Use it to build relationships. Career success is built on them, and you find inspiration and impact all along the way. Finally, one of the things that I'm most honored by is that this year, the NCI celebrated its 50th anniversary of the National Cancer Act, and I've been named as a champion and change maker. And while my science is important, I'm really honored to be this, to name a champion and a change maker. What is more important is the advocacy that nurses have done to get patient voice, patient-reported outcome science, and symptom management recognized. Regardless of the nurse in this picture, the fact that the science that nurses do is sitting there next to the holy grails of chemo prevention and translational research for the first time in the entire 50-year history of the NCI is something I'm most proud of. But I stand on the shoulders of great nurses before me, and I stand hand in hand with a cadre of nurses who have worked on this science and finally have advocated for the NCI to understand the importance of our science that nurses do. So finally, impact comes also through sustained funding, especially if you choose to work in a research-intensive university, as we all do here at Emory. So since 1998, I have been continuously funded. I've contributed to close to 200 million in research funding. The number is that high because of the cooperative group funding. I certainly couldn't have reached that through a series of R01s, but having U grants, large P grants, is something that nurses need to do more. Going for large grants is something that nurses don't do enough of. And I hope in the position that I'm in, I can help foster that. I've had numerous sponsors along the way, and this has led to being ranked among the top 5% of all funded NIH investigators, according to the Blue Ridge Institute. So I tell you this because yes, it is a measure of impact. Now here's the real take-home message. To get to where I am, I've gone through chutes and ladders, I've made errors, and I have a stack of rejected grants as big, if not bigger, than any faculty I know. I can claim some measure of success because I've had inspiration, support, mentorship, and not because I'm inherently brilliant. I am not inherently brilliant. What I am is inherently persistent. And I think that those who are successful owe most of their success not to innate intelligence, although that certainly is a key and helpful factor. It really takes persistence. It's not giving up. It's believing in yourself. It's finding your inspiration and your passion, and it's finding those who support you. So every time I get rejected, and I still get rejected in some of my grants, I feel like this. I am with you. But remember, your career success is not linear. Take your knocks, learn from your errors, do better next time, and don't give up. So I want to say and end with words from the song A Million Dreams, sung by Pink, one of my favorites. And I just hope that you all realize that we are in this together, that when you look at success, it may look daunting, but it took a lot of twists and turns and error to get to success. So if at any moment you're struggling, if you've had a publication or a grant rejected, if you're worried about making tenure, stick to your passion, find your support and your inspiration, and don't give up.
I don't care if they call me crazy. We can live in a world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of for the world we're gonna make. I don't care if they.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry that we can't give Dr. Bruner a big amount of applause, but I am lucky that I'm able to thank her for that wonderful presentation. My name is Kate Yeager. I'm an associate professor here at the School of Nursing and one of the many lucky people that Deb Bruner has mentored. I'm honored today to be able to first congratulate Deb on such an inspiring presentation and thank her for all her contributions to nursing science. And also thank her for always being a nurse first and foremost. She really does live and breathe nursing, no matter where she is and who she's talking to, and that's really important to me. I have today also the distinct pleasure of introducing some of my colleagues that have also been mentored by Deb. We've come up with some questions for her to get some tips on mentorship, since this is something Deb is so passionate about and does such a great job with. We've all benefited by her mentorship, and hopefully we can pay it forward. So I'm joined by three colleagues today. Dr. Jimbing Bai, who's an assistant professor from Emory Nursing School. He has a PhD from UNC Chapel Hill, and his research focuses on symptom and biological mechanisms of symptoms in cancer populations. We also have Dr. Sunhwa Shao, who's a longtime mentee of Dr. Bruner's. She worked with Dr. Bruner during her PhD program at University of Pennsylvania, then did a postdoc with her. But now Sunhwa is an associate professor here at the nursing school, and her research focuses on cancer-related symptoms, including using omics approach to examine potential mechanisms. She's also interested in interventional research to reduce symptoms and improve quality of life and survival for cancer patients. We're also joined today by Despina C. Mincy, who is a postdoc research fellow working with Dr. Bruner, and she's a microbial ecologist with a PhD in environmental engineering from Georgia Tech. She's been working with Dr. Bruner studying the role of the microbiome in cancer and cancer treatment outcomes using next generation sequencing approaches. So what we're going to do is all the three panelists are going to ask Dr. Bruner a question, and we'll have some dialogue. I'd love if Bing could start, followed by Sunhwa and then Despina. So take it away, Dr. Bai.
Thank you so much. It's such a wonderful opportunity to learn from Deb and also see how her work has impacted nursing research, and also especially for cancer populations. I just have a question, like as a, you can see so many achievements, and she has so many successful, mentees. My question is that as a successful mentor, what strategies or suggestions do you have to motivate them so that they can be successful, especially for junior faculty?
Thank you, Bing. And thank you, Kate. I think that you have to try to find and meet people where they are in their career trajectory in order to help them the best that you can. I think what helps is sharing not just your successes, but your failures. I think one of the hardest part about being a mentee is feeling like that mountain you're going to climb to success is so daunting. So it really is important to understand that those who are successful had lots of challenges to get up that mountain too. They didn't just breeze up there. So that there's going to be a lot of setbacks. And so how do you overcome them? And what areas are you having setbacks in? So when you're helping your mentee, it's what area do they need to focus on most? Is it their teaching? Is it their research? Is it their publications? Are they having trouble writing? And then finding numerous ways, every possible way. So whether it's going to mock reviews, which I cannot say enough about. I don't think anybody should even be permitted to put in their grants without a mock review. And I still put my work through mock review. I think that getting that feedback is absolutely critical. And I think that if they're having trouble writing, they need an editor. If they're having English language issues, they need someone to work with. Being a mentor doesn't mean that I can help in every way. What it means is that I can just try to help them find the right resources that can be beneficial to them. And one of the best resources is for them to build a network of peers to begin with. Really having other people that they can bounce ideas off, talk about their challenges, cry when they got a bad unscored grant, share the critique, really open yourself up and your vulnerability. We read my critiques all the time. And so I just think relationships are the best way to help mentees. And if you feel that you really can't help them move forward, understanding that not every mentorship mentee relationship is perfect. And what you really want to do is make them successful. So finding them the right mentor, if you're not, is also a critical step.
Sunwal, you want to go ahead with your question? Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, Deb, for your wonderful presentation. Every time, when I listen to your presentations, always very inspiring. Maybe something I may heard a couple of times, but each time I feel it's, gave me a kind of different, feeling, put the things in my mind at a different level. So it's always a great pleasure to listen to you and hear your voice. And like Kate said, I'm one of your many lucky mentees, and I started with my PhD education. And I still remember the first time when you introduced patient-reported outcome to me, I was totally kind of blind the concept. I had no idea. But now, follow your path. I put patient-reported outcome as one of my expertise. And thank you. And also gut microbiome work that I am also interested in right now is with your inspiration as well. So thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and your advice to put us in a way to be able to succeed. So my question is that as a mentor, your time is also very tight. So how you may balance your life among mentoring, your own research and other obligations and your personal life. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I tell people often that I can't say that I'm the role model in balancing. However, I love what I do. I love it. So even if it's out of balance, it's what I enjoy, and I just can't imagine doing anything else. But there are, personal life. I had children. My boys are 10 years apart. So I had a baby and a 10-year-old when I entered doctoral school, and through all those years, a 1 and an 11-year-old, et cetera. So you have to balance as you're trying to move forward in writing your research and your papers and doing whatever else you do in your career. Support. And trying, and this is not easy, trying to choose those diamonds wisely, trying not to suffocate, even if it's under a mountain of diamonds. Getting out of things when you realize it's not working for you. I find that might be a gender thing where women just hang on way too long because they're being good doobies sometimes in committees or work that they're doing that really is not benefiting them. So having crucial conversations, getting out when you need to get out, getting in, even sometimes it's scary. But to do that and to balance it with your life, you've got to have support. The other thing is, I think that the myth of a balanced day is a myth. I don't think that every day is 8 hours of work and 8 hours of family and 8 hours of sleep. I don't think that that's how life goes at all. I think I get my balance because I go on safari for 2 weeks. I work really, really hard. And then I do really crazy stuff intensely for a couple of weeks at a time. And that is my balance. But I think everybody's path is different. And what balances me is not what will balance someone else. So I think really delving deep into yourself and knowing and being able to articulate your needs are really critical.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Despina's next. If any in the audience has any questions, the question and answer box is there. We might have a time to answer a couple of them, but Despina, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you so much, Deb, for this wonderful presentation. It's always inspirational and motivating to hear from you and from your amazing career. And I'm extremely grateful to be one of your mentees, and especially as someone new in the clinical research world. I have learned so much from you, and I'm very grateful. So my question for you, and you touched upon a little bit on that, as a successful mentor, how do you find ways to encourage your mentees to go beyond their perceived limitations and achieve their maximum potential, but without imposing on their life balance or negatively affecting their mental health?
I don't know that I succeed all the time. I guess how I try is our team comes together and talks about a variety of their research topics. And so that helps us push each other. It's not just me pushing, it's the group talking about science. And when you hear what other people are doing, you think, gee, that would really dovetail really nicely with what I'm doing. If I give people anything, I hope it's just the courage to try. And not that I have the perfect path, but I really do believe that people should try new things. I'm forever making new connections for my mentees or my colleagues. You are all my colleagues now. And so I think that that's what's important. It's trying, it's having confidence, it's making new connections, and it's supporting each other in trying new things. That's what helps our mental health, when we're all there to support each other. So back to the very beginning of my talk, whether it's family or extended family or a network of friends, a network of colleagues. You need people. We all need people to have the faith and confidence in ourselves that I could fall and someone will still support me and love me, even when I make errors. And that in our team, I think we are really, here's one of the things I'm proudest of. We are really critical of each other's work, like seriously, in the best sense. We are supportive, but critical, because we push each other to be better. We don't pull punches. We say what's working, what doesn't, what I understand, what doesn't. I think Sandy said something about no nonsense. And I think that may be where I get my reputation, because we are very good at being very forthright in our critique. But when we critique, we know that we are here for each other, and we do everything in our best possible way to support each other, whether that's making a new connection, whether that's helping you with, you know, your science, and you're helping me with my science. So relationships are all about giving, and I always tend to get, I think, more than I give from my mentees. You have all taken me, every one of you have taken me down paths I could not go. Maybe I had a kernel of something like the microbiome, but I could not do the microbiome, Despina, without you, or without Bing. Bing has done tremendous work in the microbiome before you even came. So Kate is teaching me more than I would ever know about the social determinants of health and about adherence. Sunhwa got into omics before I ever touched them, and is taking me down paths that I learn from every time she talks. So I think it's just relationships, being forthright. It doesn't really help anybody to look at a grant or look at a publication, nod your head politely because you're afraid of offending someone, and say, nice work. I've had mentors that have done that. That doesn't help you grow. But what you need to do is be forthright, give critique in the best sense. That was never a dirty word, but some people have turned it into one. And know that we're here to support you. So finding that network of people that you know have got your back, they're there for you. And that's, I think, how you continue your career, progress, and keep your sanity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for your great questions. We're looking for more questions in the question and answer feature. If anybody has anything they want to throw in there. In the meantime, Deb, I'd like to ask you about nurses finding their voice, whether it's nurses at the bedside advocating for patients. We have a lot of students on the call, or, you know, a PhD nurse trying to explain what a PhD nurse does to a group of clinicians or physicians. I've seen you in so many settings where you're really, you know, you and I may be the only nurses in the room, but you have found your voice. So give us some inspiration for nurses to find their voice.
I think one of the critical things, I was talking to the students today, is that when I was an undergrad, a new nurse on the floor, I used to go with rounds, and I would watch the residents present to the clinicians. And the residents would cite evidence. They would cite publications. They would cite randomized clinical trials. And I had always been dismayed at the fact that nursing doesn't teach nurses to do exactly the same thing. To find your voice, you have to have confidence in your voice. And to be credible, there are some people who have a lot of voice, but they're not credible. And why is that? Because they're speaking from opinion, not from evidence. So whatever the topic, you need to be well-versed in what you're trying to advocate for, and you cannot do it based on opinion. It could be from a political standpoint, you're trying to change policy, but you need to know what the policy already is. You need to know what you're advocating for. You need to understand and have the emotional intelligence. You won't always get what you want, but maybe there are baby steps you can make. And so you have to learn to negotiate. You also have to understand not the problem, but the solution. To be a good advocate does not mean you stand up in a loud voice and list all the problems of the healthcare system or nursing or research or tenure track. It's about voicing knowledge of the problem and being credible in providing evidence-based solutions, even if the solution is policy. So I think that is what makes nurses credible at a table and really raises the level of the nursing voice.
Thank you, Deb. We do have a great question from one of our attendees, Dr. Vicki Hertzberg. And she's asked, about a year and a half ago, our lives changed. The pandemic threw the academic research world upside down. What do you think are the biggest lessons our community of researchers can take away from this period?
Well, one of the lessons is that productivity at Emory was not down. Productivity did nothing but increase. We've hit new levels of research funding. So kudos to everyone. One of the things that worry me is that in the adrenaline rush of COVID, we've been doing a sprint, but COVID is not a short-term race. It is a long cross-country, cross-globe race, and you cannot keep up a sprint across the globe. So I do worry about burnout. I think it's critical about the mental health issues that we were talking about, that you find your support and your relationships. Absolutely critical for mental health to be able to keep up productivity. Also, this is even more need for relationships. You cannot be the one sitting down by yourself at a computer, writing a grant and writing multiple papers and trying to get tenure and trying to teach and trying to take care of your kids or your elderly parents. You need a village. Find your village. And I think that is a glaring lesson that's come out of COVID. Those who have villages do better, not just in productivity, but with mental health and surviving all that we're going through. I think that's critical. I think we found new work ways. I think we're going to have a new workforce. I think there's going to be, the good news is, I think there's going to be more flexibility. The bad news is, I guess this is being recorded, but I worry that those newest to the workforce who are very young don't fully understand how important face-to-face relationships are. This village, these relationships I'm talking about building, it is inadequate to think you'll build them on Zoom. So, nurses in healthcare coming into the hospital, that's not a thing, but there are a lot of faculty who prefer to be on Zoom. There's a lot of millennials in our research workforce that think that Teams mean Microsoft Teams and that everything is good on Zoom. And we can already see, those of us been in the workforce a long time and understand the components of success are starting to see the disintegration of some relationships. It's not enough to look at everybody in Hollywood Squares here and to talk. It really takes time to be able to open a door, walk into somebody's office and sit down face to face and show your vulnerabilities, your concerns, share your joys, but work together in a really constructive way. So while I think COVID taught us great skills in a hybrid world, I hope that we will continue to value relationships and in-person teams, and do not discount the value of showing up.
Thank you, Deb. I really appreciate the theme of relationships and the importance of people. That's really wonderful. So without any questions in the question answer box, does any of the panel have any additional questions they'd like to ask before we wrap up and hand it back over to Dean McCauley? If not, thank you again, Deb. This has been just wonderful. You've reminded me of some lessons you taught me a long time ago. Oh, Bing, I see your hand up. Go ahead, Bing. Sorry.
Oh, I don't have a question. I clicked something wrong. Sorry about that. Anyway, great presentation. Great moderation too, Kate.
Yes, thank you, Kate. Thank you for all for being here. And again,
Great.
Dean McCauley and Dr. Dunbar for all of their kind words.
Thank you. Take it away, Dr. McCauley.
So I started to pose this as a question, Deb, but I thought it's really not a question. It's an acknowledgement of how fortunate school is to have a master mentor in its presence. And one of the hardest things that I deal with as a dean is this concept of mentorship. And thinking that it is like teaching a class or imparting information. And it's a dynamic relationship of which we got a close look at the process in Deb's talk and the response by her mentors. And you can see Deb's passion towards mentoring the next generation of nursing scientists. And I know her mentees feel it. I just want to thank you for that, Deb. And my wish is for as many of you on the talk today as possible is to say to yourself, I value mentorship and I will develop a relationship with my mentor, or I will never look at being a mentor as workload. There is joy in helping the next generation of nursing scientists find their way. And I want to thank you, Deb, for sharing that joy with us today. It is so critically important to nursing scientists because there's not many of us. And the burden of mentorship in nursing, I think, is greater than other professions just because there's so few of us and so much need in the next generation. So I want to join others in thanking you one last time for gathering together to discuss the past, the present, and the future of nursing, and to give us hope and vitality looking forward, and to honor nursing and what it is at the bedside or through research or through administration or through mentoring the next generation. So thank you, Deb. And I wanted, if I were with you, I'd be giving you a big hug now. I do have a special gift for you that you'll receive soon. And just thank you so much for joining us today and all that you do every day on behalf of Emory University and the School of Nursing. So that concludes our program today. Thanks to everyone for watching this afternoon. Bye-bye.